Warning.
All right, here's how to make the slideshow video for the Photos for a Song assignment. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We're going to go to File, New. And here's the dimensions we're looking for at 1,920 pixels by 1,080 pixels at 72 pixels per inch. This is going to make us a high definition slideshow. Let's go ahead and click on Create. And now we need to go up to the top of our screen. If you haven't done this already, go to Window, Workspace, and choose Motion. And this little motion bar down here at the bottom of the screen is going to create, and we're just going to click on Create Video Timeline. And you can see right off the bat, we've got a little clip here already. It's a little white box. Eventually, we're going to delete this. We can't yet because we have to have something here. So we'll just leave it there for now. Let's go on to the next step. Let's add our photos that we're going to use for our slideshow. We're going to do that by clicking right here on this little layer 0. We'll click on this little button and choose Add Media. Here's the photos I want to use for this. I'm going to go ahead and just click on about 6 of them by holding down Control and clicking on them. And go ahead and press Open, and those will load up into our timeline. While those are loading, again, it's important to remember that you want to add your media by using this Add Media button down here. You do not want to use the File Open at the top of your screen that a lot of people do. All right, I've got all my media added. I can see it by moving my playhead across my timeline. And you can see my images are a little too zoomed in. We'll fix that later. But for now, let's get rid of this white box. We don't need that anymore. I'm just going to click on that. And I'm going to make sure the playhead is over it as well. And that's an important thing to remember. If you want to edit or move or delete a clip, you have to not only click on it, but also put the playhead over it just like this. And then you can just press delete. And that'll get rid of that for us. So let's do a little bit of maintenance to get ready to finish our slideshow. The first thing we're going to do is convert all of our layers over here on the right hand side to smart objects. This is going to give us options later on that we won't have if they're not smart objects. This is really simple. I'm just going to right click on each one and choose Convert to Smart Object. And you have to do this over in the Layers panel. You can't do this on the timeline out here. So just right click again and Convert to Smart Object. And I'm going to go through and do that on all of these layers. All right, I've converted all my layers to smart objects. You can tell because the layer now has this distinct icon on it. That lets you know that your layer is a smart object. Now we need to do one other step to get ready, and that is we need to get all of these on their own line in the timeline. Right now they're all on the video group 1 line. We actually want each one on its own line. So we're gonna do that. I'm just gonna start at the bottom is the easiest way to do this. And I'm gonna click and drag this image up and out of the video group 1. Right about to there, and then I'll let go, and you can see it appears on top of video group 1. That's exactly what I want. So now I'll grab the next one, drag it up on top of that one, and I'm just going to keep doing this until they are all on their own line in the timeline. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm going to bring my timeline up a little bit so I can see all of them by just clicking and dragging here, dragging this up. Now I can see all my layers in my timeline, and I'm going to zoom out on my video so that I can see the whole canvas right there. There we go. Now you'll notice a couple things. This video group 1 is now empty over here in the layers palette. Let's just delete that. We don't need that anymore. Click on that and delete it. And the other thing I want to show you is that you can't quite see our slides very well because our timeline is too zoomed out. This little slider right down here at the bottom is your best friend. If I click and drag this, I can zoom in. I'm not changing the amount of time that each image shows up for. I'm just basically zooming in on the timeline. Sometimes we're going to want to be way zoomed in like this, and other times we're going to want to be way zoomed out like this. It just kind of depends on what you're doing. For now, right about there is good. And you can see that each of my slides is set to show for about 5 seconds. You can see that right here. 5 seconds and 0 frames is what we're at. If you wanted to change the time of one of your slides, what you want to do is just put your cursor over the right edge of the slide, and it turns into that little bow and arrow looking thing. I can just click and drag, and I can drag it out this way, and I can make it longer, or I can drag it to the left and make it shorter. You can also do that from the left side as well. If I make it shorter, it's going to just snap into there, and then I would just click and drag it over like this. Or I could do the opposite and leave it there and make it longer here. And I can even go past that a little bit, and it'll lengthen it out for me. I'm going to leave them all at about 5 seconds though, but I just wanted you to know how to change the time that each slide shows up so that you could fix that later on if you need. Okay, now you'll notice that the only image I can see is the one of this old lady here, and that's because she's the one on top in my timeline. What I want to do is I want to spread these all out so that if I click on play, it'll show me one for a while, then switch to another one, and then switch to another one, and so on and so forth. So this is actually really simple. I'm just going to start at the bottom. I'll leave this one right here where it is. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I have a little more room to work with. Then I'm going to click on this next image and click and drag it over in my timeline. And I do want a little bit of overlap between the two images. And then let's go to the next one and just click and drag it over. And I'm just going to keep doing this until all my images are spread out with just a little bit of overlap between each one. All right, now if I play through my slideshow, I can click and drag here, and you can see each image is going to show for about 5 seconds, and then it'll switch to the next one, and so on and so forth. The problem is all my images are a little too much zoomed in. I need to go through and make each one smaller. I'm going to do that real quick just by clicking on the first one, putting the playhead over it, doing a little Control-T, and we'll need to zoom way out to see the whole box. And I'm going to shrink this down to fit. Again, I'm not going to make it fit perfectly. In fact, I want it to be a little bit bigger, and you'll see why later on. So I'm going to leave a little bit of extra outside of the canvas, then just press enter, and I'll just go through each one. Now I'll go to this one, put the playhead over it, click on it, Control-T, again hold down Shift. You can also hold down Shift and Alt. That way you don't have to drag one corner, and it will just move towards the center if you're holding down both those keys at the same time. So I'm going to go through all of these and do that with, I want to show you one image though. This image is a vertical rather than a horizontal. So I'm going to Control-T this, and I'm going to Shift and Alt this one to shrink it down. And you have to decide what you want to do. You can either make it so it fits like that, and if you're okay with that, that is fine. That way it fills up the whole canvas. Or you can keep going and do like that, and we'll put a background image behind that, or we'll just put black behind that so that we don't have the white and gray pixels there. So that's what you do if you have a vertical image rather than a horizontal one. So I'm going to go through and do that on the rest of my images. All right, at this point we're ready, just about ready to do the fun part of the video. The next step we have to do is we need to add some music. The easiest way to do that is if you already have an MP3 maybe on your phone or something like that downloaded, it's just email that to yourself and then download it to your computer. But if you don't have an MP3 available, let me show you how to borrow one from YouTube. So here I am on youtube.com. I'm going to do Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. And I'm just going to copy this link right here. I've already searched it up, clicked on the video, copy the link, and right click on it, choose copy. I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to Google YouTube MP3 downloader. And this first one is awesome. It works if you're at home, but it's sort of blocked here at school, so don't bother using that one. This YouTube and mp3.com is pretty good as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and when it loads up, I'm just going to right click in this blank empty spot right here and paste my link in and click on download MP3. Brings us to this next screen, and again here you're going to click on download MP3, and a new tab might pop up with some kind of ad or something like that. If that happens, we'll just close out of it. So like this right here, just close that, get rid of that nonsense. And then this is going to pop up right here, and we're just going to close this as soon as it. All right, you might not get this thing that pops up. Mine does. Mine asks me where I want to save it. Yours is going to save it in this PC download, so that's where I'm going to put mine. And I'm just going to wait for that to download, and then we'll pick up the... All right, my video is downloaded, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the Start menu and go to this PC. And then I want to go into my Downloads folder right here. And here's Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. You do want to check, make sure you can tell if it's done downloading because it'll have .mp3 at the end. If it's not done downloading, it'll have a weird name right here and it just won't look like the right kind of file. But once it's done downloading, it will say .mp3. I'm just going to right click on this and choose copy or cut. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Then I'm going to jump back into this PC, go into my photo drive, go into my period, find my name, and here's my video folder, and I'm going to paste this bad boy into this folder. All right, let's go back into Photoshop. We're going to scroll down to the bottom of our timeline. We're looking for audio track. Right there, you're just going to click on this little very similar button to the one we pressed earlier, only instead of add media this time, it's add audio. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to browse to that same folder. So here I am in my video folder. Here's my Led Zeppelin file. I'm going to double click on this one and load that bad boy up into my timeline. All right, so here is my song here at the bottom. You can see if I zoom way out, my song is substantially longer than my images are going to be. So I have a couple of different options here. I can either start at the very beginning of my song and just make it cut out at the end of my slideshow. And if I wanted to do that, I would just click on the very end of the song right here and just click and drag over, bringing this thing all the way in. until it matches up with the end of my show. And I may need to zoom in a little bit to see this here. Oh, maybe a little too much. And so you can see I made it a little too long. I'm going to bring this back and have it end right there. So that will start at the very beginning of the song and play until my last slide, at which point it will stop. That is a very good option for some of you, but you might want the middle of your song rather than the very beginning. Let me show you how you would do that. You would leave this end way out where it was, and instead you'd bring in this part, and you just kind of have to wing it. So maybe I'll bring it in. You can see this little black box that I've brought this in about 30 seconds, so I'll let go there. And you can see it snapped it back to the beginning. At this point, I could hit play and listen to where my song is at and be like, no, I'm not quite there yet. So then I would bring it in even a little bit more. And then hit play and be like, oh, okay, that's right where I wanted it. So now I've got it where I want it. So then I'll match this end up so that it matches the end of my slideshow. And now I'm good to go. So I could come over here and hit play. Photoshop is a little annoying in that the first time you hit play, it won't play the first 1 or 2 seconds of audio. But if you hit stop by pressing the space bar and then hit the space bar again by bring the timeline back to the beginning, hit the space bar again, the music will be there the first time. So let's say that's where I want my audio to be, and I'm very happy with my audio placement. The last thing we're going to do with audio is just come in and do a fade in and a fade out. You can just right click on this and you can tell it to fade in. Take 4.6 seconds to fade in and 10 seconds to fade out. And maybe you want to turn it up a little bit or turn it down a little bit, and you would do that here. And you just click out of that. And let's see if that fade in took place. Again, being annoying and not playing the first bit of the song, so I just hit the space bar to stop it, bring my playhead back to the beginning, and so very good. There it faded in, and I'm sure if I let it play to the end, it would also fade out. Okay, we're done with our audio, and now we're ready to move on to the funnest part of the video. All right, at this point, it's time to start making our slideshow a little more dynamic and a little more engaging. So let's start by working on this first clip. I'm going to put the playhead over it. I'm going to click on it, and let's zoom in on it so that we can really see the clip very well in our timeline. And we're going to click on this little arrow right here or this one right here. They both do the same thing, but I like this one. I don't know why. It's just the way I learned first, I guess. You can see I have 3 options here: transform, opacity, and style. It's hard to explain what we're going to do, so let me just show you how I do it, and you'll get a feel for it pretty quickly. Basically, we don't want the slide to just sit here and not do anything. We want it to fade in. We want it to have some movement. We want it to be engaging and dynamic and not boring. But most importantly is at right about here in the slideshow, we want it to look like this. We want it to look just how it is on the screen. So I'm going to put my playhead right where I want the image to be normal, where I don't want anything weird to be happening. And I'm going to come over here, underneath here, I'm going to click on this little stopwatch next to transform, and this is going to enable keyframe animation. It sounds very fancy, but basically we're just telling Photoshop what to do with our photo and when to do it. So we just said, hey, at this point when you get here, we want this image to be right there. And again, this may not make a lot of sense until you see it all in action, but trust me, it will. So now I'm going to move my timeline over to right where the 2 images start to overlap. And right about there is perfect. And what I want is from when the timeline moves from this keyframe to this one, I want my image to move a little bit. Not a ton, but just a little bit. So I'm going to put my playhead right there. I'm going to Control T. And I'm going to make just a little adjustment. Maybe I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So I'll hold down Shift and Alt to zoom out. And maybe I'll have it move this way just a little bit. And you can see when I press Enter, Photoshop is going to automatically create another keyframe right there. So let's try that. There you go. I got a keyframe. So now what's happening is from here to here, my image is going to, watch, I'll hit play and we'll watch what happens. So it's not playing very smoothly, but you can see the image is slowly zooming out and moving from left to right at the same time. And that makes our slideshow a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dynamic. We could also, now that we have our middle part set, now we can set the endings. And the beginning and the end. So now I'm going to move my cursor way to the very beginning. And this time I'm going to do Control T again, but this time I'm going to be a little more dramatic. I'm going to be a little more drastic. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and bring this thing all the way down, real tiny. And you can see that created another keyframe for me. The only time you ever have to click anything over here is that very first one when you created this keyframe right here. So now let's watch what happens as I bring the playhead over. You can see the image is going to zoom in to that point, and it's going to slowly zoom back out and pan, meaning move from left to right, until here, at which point I now have to decide what I want it to do next. To make life easier, I'm going to move this image out of the way so we can see what we're doing. So maybe from this keyframe to the end, I want it to slide out to the right. So I'll put my playhead right at the very end. Get as close to it as I can. Right there is good enough. And I'll do Control T. Oh, I didn't have it clicked on. See, I had this one clicked on, so I did Control T and nothing happened. So let me click on this one, Control T. And this time I'm going to just have it slide all the way out just like that. Press Enter, and now let's go back and watch this whole section and see what happens. All right, very good. So we've got our animation on our first slide. Those are all pretty dramatic things. To have it slide all the way out is kind of a big thing, and then to have it zoom in very quickly like this it's kind of a cool thing too. I did want to point out one other thing. If you want this zoom to take longer, you can just click on this keyframe right here, and I could just drag this over to the right. And that changes where that keyframe is, and now this zoom takes longer. But in doing that, the animation from here to here is now shorter. So you have to kind of decide where you want your animations to be and how you want them to change. All right, let's go on to the next slide. At this point, I need to put this one back where it was supposed to be, which was right about there. And I got to put my playhead over it so Photoshop knows that this is the clip I want to be working on. And you can see this one is on its own line. These effects that we did here were only for that last clip. Now we want to work on the effects for this clip. So again, I'm going to click on this down arrow right here. I'm going to put my cursor right about there, right where the overlap ends. And I'm going to add a transform keyframe. And then I'm going to come over here. And this time I don't want any dramatic exit. I don't want anything big at the end. I just want it to fade out. And we're going to do the fades later. But so all I'm going to do for this one is, let's move this one out of the way so we can see what we're doing. So all I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to Control T this one here. Oops, I had the wrong clip clicked on again. Click on this one, Control T. I'm going to do a little Shift Alt, zoom it out, and maybe let's have it move up a little bit, and press Enter. And that's my whole keyframe animation. Is it's basically just going to be this. In fact, I don't even want one at the beginning. I'm just going to take this one and put this one at the beginning as well. And now my entire animation will just look like this. And then it'll switch to the next one. So you kind of have to decide what kind of animations you want in your video. If you want dramatic entrances and exits like we did on this first one, or just real subtle movements like we did on this one, honestly, it kind of depends on your song, on what you want to do. I did want to show you one cool effect that you can do. Let's say like right here in the middle of my song, there's a real strong crash of the cymbal, so I really want like to emphasize something happened, like a change. What I can do is I'm going to click on this one, and again, click on this down arrow, and I'm going to turn on a transform right here, and I'm actually going to come past that, and this time I do need to manually add a transform. So I'm going to manually add it by clicking on this little keyframe button right here. You can see that put another diamond right there. And now I'm going to put the cursor right in between the two and do a little Control T. And maybe I'll have it shrink down and then press Enter. And you can see that's going to manually create a keyframe there for me. So now when my slideshow is playing, it didn't play very smoothly on here because I'm recording a video at the same time, but you can see it's going to zoom out real quick. So there's going to be a dramatic change right there. And if you want that to happen a little bit faster, that's okay. That's real easy to do. All you got to do is move these closer in. And now that change will happen very quickly. All right, I'm going to do one more for you that includes all of the things we talked about. So click on this one, put the playhead over it, click on this little down arrow over here, and I'm going to put my playhead right where the overlap ends. So I'll turn on my transform keyframe there. I'm going to come over here to where the overlap happens over here, and I'll do a little Control T, Shift and Alt, and I want that to happen. Press enter there. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do an exit for this image, so Control T. You can see this other frame is on top of it. That's okay. I'm going to do Shift Alt because I want it to shrink way down, and I'm feeling a little cheesy, so I actually want it to rotate. You can rotate up to 180 degrees. Any more than that and it won't rotate correctly. So I'm going to just rotate just like that and press enter, and then you can see how that, as that fades out, it's going to rotate away. And then I'll come back to the very beginning, and I'll do another Control T here, and I'll do Shift and Alt to shrink it down toward the middle, and I'm going to move it over because I want it to fade in like that. Press enter. It's going to automatically create the keyframe for me. So now it comes in like this, and it hangs tight for a second and slowly zooms out, and then it rotates out of the frame like that. And then I want a little bump in the middle, so I'll come right here where the crash of my symbols occurs. This time I'm going to manually add a transform there. Manually add a transform here. Then put the playhead right in between those two. Do a little Control T, Shift Alt, press enter, and that's going to give me that bump in the middle. As it's playing along, it's still going to slowly be zooming out. It's all going to happen very smoothly, but right there it's going to go whoop, little bump where the crash of the symbols is going to be. All right, now we're ready to add our opacity. We want our images to fade in and fade out. Fortunately, if you understood the last part, this part will be real easy. All I'm going to do is put my playhead right where my transform keyframe is, and I'm going to turn on the opacity keyframe now. So I'll just click right there, and that turns that on. And I'm going to bring this over to the end, and we're not going to make any changes to opacity here. So I'm trying to line that up. So now I need to add another opacity keyframe. Right there, and now, so that just tells Photoshop, hey, don't do anything with the opacity between here and here. But when I get here to the very end, I do want the image to fade out. So I'll put my playhead right there at the end. I'll come over in my layers palette, make sure that layer is what is clicked on. Come to my opacity and drag that down to 0. And then let's do the same thing at the very beginning. Put my playhead right there. And I don't need to create a keyframe. Photoshop's going to do it for me. When I change the opacity down to 0, it created a keyframe. So now my image is not only going to zoom in like I did in the transform, but it's also going to fade in as it zooms in. And it's going to do its thing. And then over here, it's going to fade out, which we can't see yet because this one has not faded in. So let's do this one real quick, and then we can get real close to wrapping this video up. So again, I'll put it right there where the transition, where the overlap ends, and create an opacity keyframe. Then I'll come over here to where this transition or this overlap begins, create another opacity keyframe, and then I'm going to put it at the very end. Bring my opacity down to 0. Oh, I took it too far. Let's get back on that slide. There we go. Opacity down to 0, and then back to the very beginning. Opacity down to 0. And let's see how that looks. So now as this one is playing along, the one image is going to fade out, the other one is going to fade in at the same time. And just like that, we got the effect that we wanted. And then at the end, this one will fade out, and then we would go and have the opacity of this one fade in. So you need to go through and do that on all of your slides. Once you're done with that, come back here and I'll show you a couple other techniques you can use to make your slideshow a little more awesome, and then we'll be... All right, just two more things I need to show you. Well, that's a lie. A few more things I need to show you. One, what do we do in a situation like this one where the image does not fill up the whole canvas? We've got this empty space right here. We have a couple different options. We can either just put a black or a white box behind it, or we could put another image behind it. So let me show you how we would do any of those things. We're going to come down to the very bottom image layer in our timeline. We're going to click on this, and we're going to click on New Video Group. And that's going to show up right there. But we want the video group to be at the very bottom. We want it below everything. So over here in my layers palette, I'm just going to click on this and drag it down below. This basically gives us a whole nother line to work with. So let's say behind this image, I want just a black box. Well, I'll come down here to my New Video Group layer, or I could click on this, and I'm going to create a new layer in this video group. So I'll just use my New Layer button down here, and that's going to give me a new blank layer. I'm going to move this blank layer so that it's directly behind this image, which is right there. And I'm just going to fill this with black. So I just come up, and with that clip selected with the playhead over it, I would just go to Edit, Fill. Oops, I was on File, Edit, Fill, and set this to black, and press OK. You can see that puts a black background behind that image for it. So now maybe behind this image, I don't want black. Maybe I want another image behind this image. That's actually real easy to do. Again, I'll just be on my video group 1. I'll just click on this little down thing, and I'll choose Add Media. I don't really know why. Sometimes when you click on the Add Media, this is set to 3D Studio. Not sure what that deal with that is, but I know that I'm looking for a JPEG, so I'm just going to click on that and change this to JPEG. And there's all my JPEGs. So I could even use the same image behind it if I wanted. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to add that image in on that timeline. But you'll notice the blend doesn't occur very naturally. What I want, in fact, the blend occurs too late. So what I want is for these two images to blend together. Well, when two images are on the same line, that's actually really easy. Up here, we had to use the opacity trick that I showed you. But down here, when they're on the same line, we can actually just click on this little button right here. And right here where it says crossfade, I can just click on that and drag it in and put it right over those two. And now the black blocks and the other image are going to blend together. And as the red-haired girl fades out, which is not going to happen because I haven't done it yet, the other image is going to fade in, and that background is going to switch nice and smoothly between the two. And again, this one, it doesn't even have to fill up the whole canvas. I could come in and I could make this one nice and small. Just kind of like that. And maybe all I'm going to do with this one is just have it fade in. And then let's just do this real quick. I'm going to do a transform right there, and then I'm going to just move this over here to the end. And I'm just going to click on this and drag it over. And you can see that made another keyframe for me. And now the only thing that's going to happen with that slide is that it's going to move from one end to the other like that. So those are a couple of advanced techniques you can use to make your slideshow a little more interesting, a little more engaging, a little more dynamic. But for the most part, we're pretty much done. So that's awesome news. So let's go to File, Export, and we are going to look for Render Video. And once this pops up, you want to give your video a name. I'm going to call this one Slideshow. You want to select the folder you want it to go into. It should be that photo drive where all your stuff has been saved. So I'm just going to put mine there. And then the only other thing you really need to worry about is this right here where it says Preset. Click on this, and we want YouTube HD 1080p 29.97. Click on that, and don't worry about anything else. Those are the only things you need to worry about: the name, the folder, and YouTube. And then you're just going to hit Render. And this is going to take a while, so don't do this if there's only a few minutes left in class. Do this when you have plenty of time, because it will take a good 10 minutes or so. But then after that, you're done.